Now, welcome to another Let's Talk Some Star Wars, where this time we'll be taking a look at and discussing the results of the poll that asked whether or not you've seen Rebels and what you then think of the Ahsoka series so far in relation to that. I'll also then, of course, be reading and responding to some of the comments left on the poll. And so let's get started by looking at those results, where we'll see that 48% of voters have seen Rebels and are enjoying Ahsoka, 12% have seen it but are not enjoying Ahsoka, 8% have not seen Rebels and are still enjoying Ahsoka. Then we have 4% who haven't seen Rebels and are not liking what they're seeing so far in this new series, and a final 27% who have not watched Ahsoka at all. Which is a fairly large number when you, of course, keep in mind I primarily cover Star Wars here, and so I think we can safely say or assume most of the people who watch my videos and thus will get and vote in these polls that they are or were Star Wars fans, and over a quarter of them either have no interest in watching this at all, or yes, have potentially just not started watching it for some reason or another, but eventually will. Looking at the other numbers then, well, quite clearly, many more people who have watched Rebels are watching Ahsoka than those who have not. Which I don't know if we can necessarily take anything away from that, considering, again, Star Wars channel here, and yeah, a lot of people are going to have seen Rebels who watch a Star Wars channel. We'd basically have to do another poll and ask the 27% who aren't watching this series if they've seen Rebels, and if that is in any way impacting their decision to watch this or not. Either way, of those who have seen Rebels, it looks like 80% of them have enjoyed Ahsoka so far, while those who have not seen Rebels, only 67% are enjoying, which is, I suppose, a fairly significant difference. I mean, it's not a huge one, but 13% is 13%. That is a discrepancy. Though honestly, I wouldn't have been surprised if it were a bigger number than that, if more than, say, 2 out of 3 were kind of not enjoying this or maybe lost by the Ahsoka series. I also thought, or wouldn't have been surprised if more than 80% of people may have ended up liking this. That more of the people who had watched Rebels, and thus probably liked it if you watched all of it, that they might like what's going on here in the Ahsoka series thus far. Which, yeah, it does feel more like Rebels Season 5 than an actual Ahsoka series. Though, who knows, maybe that's actually been a detractor for them. Maybe they're Clone Wars fans too and wanted a little more Ahsoka and a little less Rebels out of the show. Who knows? Still, either way, 4 out of 5 people who watched Rebels and who, again, probably liked it to some degree if they kept watching it, they've been enjoying the show, and that's really not that bad. Alright, so let's now move on to some comments here, but not before just once again saying thank you to everyone who votes, comments, and watches these or any of my videos across both the channels. It is very much appreciated. Also, a huge thank you to everyone who supports these channels over on Patreon. Thank you very much for that. And so now let's begin, as we always do, with the top-rated comment, which this time came to us from Derek Lopez, who said, "Before I went into the Ahsoka show, I rewatched Rebels in case I didn't miss anything. So far, the show is pretty decent, but I'm still on the edge that there's a high chance they'll mess this up. I still don't have any high hopes. I'll wait until the show completely ends." And this is nothing against Derek here at all, but it is kind of sad that this ended up being the top-rated comment, not to mention there were plenty of other comments like this one or that echoed kind of the same sentiments. It's kind of sad that we've gotten to the point with Star Wars where when something starts off relatively good, in my opinion here, that we have to kind of hold our breath and hope it can stay good and ultimately stick the landing, that we're more worried about that than just enjoying the ride. There were also comments about how apathy is death, no doubt in reference to the fact that, yeah, again, a little over a quarter of the people who voted aren't watching this for whatever reason. And you have to imagine that once upon a time, a lot of them would have been watching this, or at least given it a chance, even if they hadn't seen or maybe not been a huge fan of Rebels. Furthermore, and this is anecdotal, so take it or leave it, but I personally don't know, like, anyone, any of my friends or family outside of the couple who are pretty big Star Wars fans. I don't know any of them who are watching this show, and usually quite a few of them do indeed watch all the Star Wars shows and sort of report back to me. But not this time. None of them. I mean, none of them. Literally none of them are watching Ahsoka right now. And when I ask them why, they say, well, maybe I'll get around to it, or it just doesn't look that exciting, or maybe they're kind of not as excited after Mandalorian Season 3. A lot of them did not enjoy Mando Season 3. But anyway, anecdotal, but it does seem like Star Wars continues to fall off the radar for a lot of people. Not just fans, but the more casual or general viewer as well. Anyway, let's now move on to this comment from Matt McFat, who said, I've been waiting with bated breath on Ahsoka. So far, I'm interested to see where it goes, but I'm worried the shortness of the series won't allow for everything it needs to stick the landing. And yeah, I'm a little surprised that we're now 3 episodes in and it doesn't feel like a whole lot has happened. I honestly thought episode 3 would kind of cover pretty much the rest of what we'd seen in the trailers thus far and in the commercials and all that. That we would have got the fights in the forest, essentially. And that we would have then had, a good 5 episodes of mystery left. That we'd end up spending a good deal of that time in the other galaxy. And now I'm wondering, just when are we going to get to that other galaxy? Though, who knows, maybe it'll pick up the pace now that we have the opening and introduction out of the way, if you will. That it could pick up the pace now that it's set the stage for the story to come. But if not, if this kind of keeps the same pace it's going at, well then I'm not sure we're going to get anywhere near as much as maybe a lot of people were hoping for out of this series. I mean, we'll be halfway through the season after this next episode, and it might just, again, kind of cover what we've already seen in the trailers, and that doesn't seem to leave a lot for the back half, especially if we keep getting 35 to 40-minute episodes the rest of the way. Alright, and next up, this comment from Christine Blakesley, who said, I've seen Rebels, and I've been enjoying the series so far. I love seeing the Ghost crew back on screen again. Seeing Hera being a general in the New Republic and watching Sabine being tutored under Ahsoka is interesting. However, I think that could cause problems going forward in the series, because Ahsoka doesn't really feel like the main character in her own show. There is time to address this, but it needs to happen sooner than later. Also, going along with this is a comment from Campbell Beatty, who said, Hey Thor, love your videos. I'm enjoying Ahsoka and continuing the story from Rebels, but still hoping for a concrete explanation of Ahsoka's timeline in universe, especially during the original trilogy. Now, Sabine's training adds another time frame Ahsoka was around begging more questions. Do you think we will get a solid explanation of Ahsoka's timeline by the end of the season, or have even more questions? Thank you. I'm going to go with even more questions, and this does kind of go along with the previous comment about how quickly time feels like it's going so far without a ton necessarily happening. And though I was hoping for maybe some story to fill in the gaps with Ahsoka, mainly where she was or what she was doing during the original trilogy, that is still a pretty big mystery. That is a big chunk of time and an important part of the timeline in general. Not to mention, when did she meet Luke for the first time? We'd love to see that. I think most fans of Ahsoka and Luke would really love to see that first meeting. And honestly, I'm not sure we're going to get anything like that in this series. Oddly, and it could change, but so far, this hasn't really felt like Ahsoka as much as it does indeed feel like Rebels Season 5, like I was saying before. That said, who knows, we could get an entire flashback episode at some point. Or maybe not a whole episode, but a longer flashback to who knows what and when. And it could give some backstory for those who aren't overly familiar with this character. And it could give us fans who are and want more of the blank spaces filled in. It could give us something interesting to chew on, if you will. Moving on now, we have this comment from Braden Tamor, who said, I have dismissed Rebels since it was released. As a huge Clone Wars fan, to me it felt like they canceled my favorite show and replaced it with a baby show. The first 2 episodes of Ahsoka made me want to watch Rebels, now a season into it, and I feel like such a fool for never giving it a chance. And I gotta admit, I had the same kind of attitude or fears about Rebels back in the day as well. I remember right before it came out, they put out these character shorts for each character, and they looked a little goofy and childish. And even the first season, especially the first few episodes before Tarkin comes into the mix, they were also a little on the childish side, and they weren't exactly the best, not as good as some of the later episodes would certainly be. And you might want to say in rebuttal to that this was on Disney XD. It was rated Y7, meaning it's basically for 7-year-old kids. So what exactly did you expect? But as the comment pointed out, it did feel like we were losing Clone Wars for this. Like this was its replacement. So it kind of felt like a slap in the face, and that it should have been maybe a little more to replace that show. However, even if it never was quite as good as Clone Wars, which is not meant as an insult against Rebels as much as it is a compliment towards Clone Wars, that it was just that damn good, especially the final few seasons. Anyway, even though Rebels wasn't ever quite as good as Clone Wars, it has some really, really good episodes, but in general, Clone Wars is a better series, I think. It nevertheless still held its own, and it was a good series by and large. It had some dead episodes here and there, but like I just said, it had some great ones as well. And I do hope that people who haven't seen it but are maybe really enjoying Ahsoka right now, I hope they go back and at least give it a chance and maybe find that it's not as bad as some people think, or claim it to be. And moving on now, we have this comment from Silith, who said, "Can I have a vote for I've never seen Rebels or read Ahsoka's book, and I'm just meh about the show. I don't dislike it, but I'm not blown away either. And Star Wars needs fatal lightsabers back. It was surprising when Maul came back. Now it's just a gimmick. So much so that in the Star Wars tabletop role-playing game I run, I was going to make it so lightsabers do not kill if you're only stabbed, lol." And if I could list more options with these polls, more than 5, I certainly would, but that is the cap by YouTube. And I would have absolutely included a more middle-of-the-road option for both the seen and not seen Rebels options, or maybe a kind of wait-and-see option, because, and even going along with our top comment, I'm sure plenty of people out there are kind of like this. They're kind of like, it's good, it's not great, I kind of want to wait and see, I hope it doesn't go south, and that sort of thing. And I'll admit this poll may have been a bit premature, but I was mainly kind of trying to see how much Rebels fans were either appreciating the Ahsoka series thus far, or how lost, or not lost, those who hadn't seen Rebels might be here towards the beginning of the show. Are you understanding what's going on right at the start or not? And I do mainly agree that it hasn't been great. It has been good, but I'm waiting for something to really make me go, wow. I'm really waiting for this series to do something that goes above and beyond, perhaps you could say. And as I've said before, Star Wars should be great most of the time, right? Obviously, it's not always going to be. Obviously, not everything is going to be amazing. You're going to make some duds, and as long as the majority of what you put out there is good, I think people will be, in general, forgiving. And of course, you always have to keep in mind different people will feel differently about different projects. I could go into the whole Andor thing once again about how some out there absolutely love it and some completely despise it. But anyway, like I was saying, I do think this show needs a little extra oomph or something to happen that really stands out and not necessarily subverts our expectations or anything like that. But it really gets us to say, wow, that was awesome, and this is a great series on its own, as well as a worthy continuation of Rebels and worthy of the Ahsoka name. And I do think what could be that wow factor is however they end up using Anakin Skywalker in this, or the return of Hayden Christensen, which is long rumored and probably going to happen. I'd be stunned if it didn't. And I don't want to say it'll make or break the series. One moment or one scene should not make or break the series. It should be good in general, right? But it could be, and hopefully will be, that sort of moment that just caps the whole thing off. Not unlike, say, Luke's return in The Mandalorian Season 2. Something amazing, but that wasn't the only reason why that show was great. It was just this sweet cherry on top of the already pretty delicious sundae. Alright, and before I keep rambling about dessert, let's just get to a few final comments before wrapping this up. Starting with this one from Star Wars Hendrix, who said, "My coworker who has not seen Rebels and is a much more casual fan than all of us, but he's enjoying it. I also sat down with my mom and watched the first 3 episodes, and she said she liked it more than Mando, and she said it felt like we were watching original Star Wars, George Lucas Star Wars. So I think the show is landing with both hardcore and casual fans." Then there's this comment from Ad Do It All Day, who said, "I've watched Rebels and I'm loving Ahsoka so far. Episode 3 took me back to watching Rebels. Lots of fun, great action." Then there's this one from B. Harmonk, who said, "I haven't seen Rebels and have been enjoying Ahsoka to an extent, but I'm ready for the story to happen. Let's get to the main event. And almost halfway into the series now, and it just hasn't happened yet." Our next comment then comes to us from Bra Chayator, who said, "I have not seen Rebels or any other animated Star Wars series, but I enjoy Ahsoka. It seems interesting and fun so far." We also have this one from Games Rock, who said, "I stopped watching Rebels after Season 2 and watched Ahsoka because I liked her in Clone Wars and want to see her story finish. It's not very good so far, but I haven't lost interest yet." We then have this comment from JJ McScoozy, who said, "I was never a fan of Rebels, so I fell off after the first few episodes, and watching Ahsoka was like I had never seen a Star Wars movie before. I was so confused." We then have a comment here from Lions Fan, who said, "It's mid, only slightly better than Kenobi so far, but below my expectations that I had for the show." And finally, this comment from Mariah Jade, who said, "Never saw the cartoons when they were on, but I got sick of being told I had to watch them to annoyance, so I went through Clone Wars and Rebels. So far, all the episodes feel like comic panel scenes, minimal talking with a pretty background. I can't say I relate to or really care about the characters, but I was just curious to see the show. Episode 3 was copying Star Wars Episode 4 enough that I had to roll my eyes. Just all feels like it's light on story / character building in favor of, oh look, I drew this cool sequence and remember this. Also, it stretches my suspension of disbelief a bit far in spots. Just kind of mid for me so far. I expect those who saw it as kids are liking it. Well, that's going to be all I got for you this time. So now it's your turn to take to the comments below and tell me if you've seen Rebels and tell me what you think of Ahsoka, assuming you're watching it. Or tell me what you think of what I or anyone else had to say here in this video. Whatever you choose to do though, leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.